So I just read Winterlong by Elizabeth Hand. So this is the first book in the Winterlong series by Elizabeth Hand. This is the third book I've read from her. Previously I read Wilding Hall and Illyria. I really enjoyed both these books. I really enjoyed this book. It's a sci-fi book. It's really sci-fi, but there's some horror elements in here, some fantasy elements also. I'd say there's some mythology. The mythology almost felt like Greek mythology at times, because you have kind of these animals mixed within the realm of the humans and stuff like this. So I really enjoyed that from this book, actually. So let's start with this. There are actually 6 types of factions, religions, type of philosophy, I'd say, race even to a certain degree. So mainly you have the ascendants, which are more or less the scientists in here. Not only scientists, but the army, the government in a way also. You have the curators, which are actually which are historians. Essentially, they're recording the history that happened previously. So it's set, the story is set in the far future. Then you have the Paphians. So these are essentially sex workers, prostitutes, essentially. Then we have the zoologists. So as their name says, they are mostly interested in animals. You have the biologists, who are just, watching the nature, essentially. Then you have the Lazars. So they're essentially like people that were trapped outside when you have these rain, but the rain is, I guess, radioactive because their bones are melting, essentially. So the rain is kind of radioactive or acid or anything. It's poisonous, actually. And the Lazars are the unfortunate that were trapped in the rain outside, and they are slowly dying, essentially. So it's mostly children and elderly that are within these categories of person. Then you have the Aardmen. So this is where, as I said, the animals come more into play. This is where, there are dogs, so human dogs. They were genetically modified to be human dogs, essentially. And there's this other animal. It's not clear if there are other animals like her, but you have Scarlet Pan. She's a chimpanzee, if I remember correctly, because I always just assume monkey. But yeah, she's a chimpanzee that can talk, essentially, and she's an actress in the story, and she'll come into play a bit later when one of the main character goes into theater and becomes an actress with Miss Pan, actually. So on with the story. So the story takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. So as I said, it takes place in the future, and it's kind of the fallout of nuclear war. This is my guess. It's not really explained, but the rain is kind of radioactive. So my guess is there was this war, and this nuclear war, and it just destroyed most of the world. Essentially, I don't really know how far we are in the future. I think it's kind of mentioned like 1,000 year or so in the future, something like this. But once again, I'm not really sure. And yet the main point of the story, there's this fight between 2 gods, a goddess and a god. They're twins, and you have this fight that should happen between these two to have the third, what they're calling ascension, essentially. And we don't really know what ascension is. It's just that the world changes every time there's this ascension. And you had one, the first ascension was essentially, my guess once again, this nuclear war that happened, and humanity ascended to what they are now in the story. In the story, there are two different narrators, so we're following these two main characters throughout the story. I really liked seeing both these point of views. Usually, point of view is not something that I really enjoy in literature, but here it really fits, in my opinion, because you're seeing both these point of views and how they're kind of seeing each other, because one of the main character was aware of the other but not the other one, so at one point they both become aware of each other, and the story follows afterwards. And I really like that, seeing the point of view at first from the person that is not aware of that other person. I really liked that, and seeing the world through her eyes. She knows all the things that she's talking about, but we don't. I like this when authors do that you have to imagine something that you don't understand. Like, I really enjoy that. I don't know why I'm liking this that much, but I really do. Like, you have all these words that don't really mean anything just yet, and it's kind of hard to imagine this world. But the further you go into the story, the more you kind of understand and get a sense of what's going on, and also like a clear sense of what are these different things. And this is something that I really enjoyed from this book, is the fact that she's mixing things that already exists with stuff that doesn't exist. So I really liked that. Once again, it helps building this world, on knowing what of the stuff is in some parts, and not understanding the other things, like what they are and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that once again. And also, yeah, the story is divided in different chapters, like all other stories. But the thing that's really interesting here is the fact that you move between narrators between these chapters. So you have, let's say, first chapter you're following the girl, the second chapter you're following the boy. I'm saying girl and boy because they're teenagers, they're really young. But it's not a YA book. Actually, I don't feel like it is, because there's a lot of violence actually in this book, and a lot of sex trafficking, and that would be something that turn off some people, because there's a lot of child abuse. It's never graphic though, but in a sense I feel like this world is more believable, because the people that would really suffer the most are the children, in my opinion. Children and the elderly. She might go a bit too far with the Payfians, so the sex trafficker, and the children that are there. There's a bit of human trafficking in this section. It might be too much for some, but in my opinion, she never goes too far. It's never graphic. Even though it's never really graphic, it might be too much for some. I really enjoyed this book. I can't wait to see what comes next. Right now I'm reading the second book, so Estival Tide. I'm around page 200 or something, so around midway through the book. I'm liking it so far. It's really different than book one, but I can't wait to talk to you guys about this book. Once again, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it.